Hi guys, welcome to Cooking with the Cabinets. I'm Matt. Let's have some fun today.
Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to talk about rice. It's actually a lot easier than you would think it is. The first thing we're going to want to do is measure out how much rice we're going to cook. Today I'm using basmati rice because that's what Walmart had for me to get a hold of. So take your opening, and I tend to fill my measuring cup over the strainer because it catches any spillage and just prevents a little bit of mess. And then pour that in there. Now I'm using 1/3 cup today. So what you're going to do is take twice as much water as you took of rice. So go ahead and fill yourself up 2/3 cup of water. Pour that in your pan and go ahead and get it started working up to a boil. While that's going, take your rice and you're going to rinse it in the strainer. Keeps the rice together. You don't need to rinse it overly much, but just enough to get some of that excess starch off. So our rice is rinsed, and we rinse the rice to help the grains stay a little bit more individual. It helps for have fluffier rice. Our water is all the way up to a boil, and you do want to get that all the way up to a full boil. And just like pasta, I take just a little bit of salt and give it some salt. And then once your water's going really good, take your rice, put it in there. Make sure you get all the rice out of your strainer. And then you're going to go ahead and just turn it down to low.
Hey Dad, can I watch
it up. Alright, so our rice is turned down, and we're going to go ahead and set our timer for 18 minutes. And we will be back when that timer is done. Do not mess with this while that timer is going. If you mess with it, you will mess up your rice and it will not cook properly. Alright, so the timer on our rice is almost done. So we're going to go ahead and start on the next part. I'm going to be using little boneless beef ribs that I have slightly frozen. And the point of slightly freezing them is to make them easier to cut down even smaller so that they'll cook relatively quickly. You want to try to cut them down into thin strips, which is a lot easier when there is a little bit less give to the meat. If you want to, you can do these one at a time. I just happen to have the space to do it as a group of two. And I buy these at the grocery store, tend to buy them whenever they have the little yellow tag that means they're close to their freeze by date. And then I wrap them in groups of 2 or 3, depending on how many people are home, so that I will have meat to make lunch for however many people are home. Alright, so with this, we're going to take our trusty garlic powder. Pepper. And then I like to use a little bit of chili powder. Just gives it a little bit of extra flavor. And really, you can season this meat however you want. You'll notice I'm not using salt. That's because once it's in the pan, I am going to be using soy sauce. This is the low sodium variety, but mostly because that's what I can get a hold of, and I try to always have soy sauce in the house. Alright, so our rice is done. We are going to grab a hold of a towel or a pot holder or something. Take this lid off, because that lid's going to be a little warm. Take your rice, and before it comes out of the pan, you're going to go fluff it up really good. And you'll see looking at this that there's lots of individual little grains of rice there. They're not sticking together. There's no issue with that whatsoever. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this and put it in my trusty bowl.
Mama?
And while you want your rice warm, you do not want it so hot that you can't stand to eat it. So what I do while I'm going to make my stuff to go with my rice is I just spread it out a little bit to let it cool so it's a little bit easier to use later. Alright, so I've left my hob on. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out my skillet and get that warming up so that we'll be able to throw our meat down into it. Alright, so that's been heating up. I went ahead and got out some frozen vegetables and some butter because, well, you're going to want something to go with just your meat. Alright, my pan is starting to get warm. So here's how you tell if your pan is warm enough. You get a little bit of water on your finger, and you throw it down in there. And that water should bounce happily. Alright, so you take your knife and you cut out just a little pat of butter, drop it in your pan, and let your butter melt. I'm going to go ahead and put my butter back in the fridge because I don't want to ruin this butter. Alright, use that butter around your pan to get it nice and coated. And I'm not doing any onions or anything today because I'm just cooking for me. I'm not cooking for anybody else. There's a random piece of rice that fell out of my bowl. Alright, so then we take our meat, and I use my knife, kind of like a shovel, and I get that meat straight into the pan. Alright. We're going to add a little bit more heat to it so that we get a good sear going on this meat. And this meat is cut pretty thin, so it's not going to take terribly long to cook. But you want to go ahead and get a sear on both sides pretty quickly, and then go ahead and add your vegetables, especially if, like me, you're working with frozen vegetables today. Alright, so our meat is flipped. I'm going to go ahead and add our thicker vegetables first. That's some carrots, so they're going to take a couple more minutes to cook than, say, the peas will, which peas can go in at the very last minute. Alright, so I'm just going to add a good chunk of these carrots to the pan. And let those start to cook. And before you start doing anything else with this, you do want to give those carrots a minute to defrost and cook down. soak up some of that nice beef juice that's in the bottom of your pan already. Alright, so you got that working. There's a good chunk of fat in your pan. So the next step is to make a sauce. Alright, so our next step here is to start on a sauce. And I have a super simple, really easy cheese sauce that I use for, well, a lot of things. I use it as a base for mac and cheese, what have you. So you take some cream cheese, and get it in your pan at a medium-low heat if you don't want to mess your cheese up. And with your cheese in the pan, go ahead and add just a little bit of milk. Doesn't need a whole lot. Go ahead and just set your milk to the side because you might need more if you want to make it saucy or whatever else you might want to do with it. And so this cream cheese and milk combination is going to thicken up on its own for the most part. So you shouldn't need to add any cornstarch. You don't need a flour base, nothing like that. Okay. So your cheese sauce is still cooking in with the fat from the meat. And it's going to be a brown color because of the meat that's in there already. But that cheese should be cooking out pretty well. Go ahead and get that good and mixed in. And once the cheese sauce is going, okay, then it's time to add your peas. Alright. And a little bit of soy sauce. You don't need a whole lot of soy sauce, but I can kind of just eyeball it so that it covers the peas a little bit. And then mix those in there. And that will give your salt component to the dish, as well as give a little bit more liquid to thin your sauce out if you need it. Alright, those peas aren't going to take but maybe 2 minutes to cook. So get that mixed. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese into it because mo cheese, mo better. Is there such thing as too much cheese in a cheese sauce? Go ahead and put that in there. Just get that cheese nice and mixed in. Make sure all of your Parmesan cheese that you've added in is melted. Your peas are already starting to get soft, but they're not mushy. You do want those peas to have a little bit of bite left to them. You're going to give your dish texture, which is something that you are going to want. Alright. Once that's done, go ahead and turn that off. And that can hang out for just a minute with the burner off while you take your time to make your plate pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push all of this rice over to one side. Okay, just like that. Set your bowl down. Be safe when you're grabbing the handle, hot metal handle. Lift it up. And there you have rice with an easy beef cream sauce. Thanks, y'all. Have a wonderful afternoon.